When I opened the door and saw Daniel standing there, my first thought wasn't anger, it was disbelief. He was holding a baby. A little boy, maybe 2 years old, his small face pressed against Daniel's shoulder, half asleep. The child's hair was dark and wavy, too familiar, and his tiny hand was clutching Daniel's shirt as if he belonged there. For a moment, everything went quiet. The wind outside slowed. The sounds of the evening, the hum of a passing car, the creak of the porch railing all faded. It had been 3 years since I'd seen Daniel in person. 3 years since the divorce. 3 years since I'd stood in a courtroom and watched him sign away the life we built together. And now he was here, holding a child, smiling that same, disarming smile that used to make me forgive things I shouldn't have. "Hi, Maya," he said softly. "Can we talk?" I stared at him, my hand still gripping the door. "No," I whispered. "No, Daniel, we can't." He sighed, glancing at the baby. "Please, it's important." Something in his voice, not pleading, not arrogant, but something in between, made me pause. Against my better judgment, I stepped aside. He walked in like a man who still knew the layout of my home. His shoes scuffed against the same hardwood floors we once picked out together. He looked around as if expecting ghosts. Maybe he saw them, because I certainly did. "Who's the child?" I asked, my voice sharper than I intended. He hesitated, then adjusted the boy in his arms. "This is Liam." The name landed like a pebble in a still lake. Small, but it rippled everywhere. I didn't ask the obvious question. I couldn't. The fear of his answer sat heavy in my throat. "Where's Ava?" I asked instead. "My daughter. Our daughter. She's with my mom," he said. "She knows I'm here." I crossed my arms. "Good. Then say what you came to say, Daniel. And make it quick." He swallowed. "Maya, this is going to sound insane. But Liam, he's yours." I blinked. For a second, I thought I'd misheard. "I'm sorry, what?" His eyes softened, that manipulative, practiced sorrow he used to wear like a second skin. "He's your son." I laughed. I couldn't help it. A sharp, broken laugh that made the baby flinch. "You must have lost your mind. Daniel, you cheated on me. You moved in with her. And now you're standing in my house, telling me her child is mine?" He set the boy down gently on the couch, then turned to me, his hands raised. "It's complicated. You have to let me explain. Try me." He took a deep breath. "When I was with Sarah, the name made my stomach twist, she got pregnant. But after he was born, there were questions. Medical issues. The doctors ran tests, and they said something didn't match. Sarah started to panic. She said the hospital must have mixed up the records. And then she left. Disappeared. I didn't know where she went until last month, when she dropped Liam off at my mother's house with a note saying she couldn't take care of him. And the note said, he wasn't hers." He looked at me like he'd just delivered a confession that would make sense. I stared at the baby, the boy sitting quietly, clutching a toy car, and felt something deep, primal shift inside me. "What do you mean, not hers?" "She said Liam was yours," Daniel said again, quieter this time. "That she'd used an embryo from the clinic. From before the divorce." The room tilted. My knees nearly gave out as I tried to piece together what he was saying. The fertility clinic. The treatments. The procedures we'd gone through before everything fell apart. I remembered the frozen embryos, the papers, the way Daniel had handled most of it when I was too depressed to deal with the aftermath. "You told them to discard them," I whispered. He looked away. I thought I did. My heart began to pound so hard I could hear it. I wanted to scream, to throw him out, to call the police, to do anything but stand there and listen. "Do you have proof?" I asked finally. "Or are you just here to ruin what little peace I have left?" He pulled an envelope from his jacket and handed it to me. Inside was a folder stamped with the name of the fertility clinic we'd used. Paperwork. Dates. My signature. And a DNA report. I read just enough to see my name and the words 99.98% maternal match. My vision blurred. I sank into the armchair. The baby, my child, stared at me with wide eyes, as if he knew something about me I didn't. Daniel sat across from me, his hands clasped, his head low. I didn't know until recently. I swear to you, Maya, I didn't plan any of this. I felt the world slow down again. That familiar numbness, the one that comes right before pain takes over, settled in. Get out, I said quietly. He hesitated. Maya, please. Get out. I didn't shout. I didn't need to. My voice carried the weight of every night I'd cried over him, every lie I'd swallowed, every promise he'd broken. He stood, looked at the child, and then at me. He's yours, Maya. Whether you believe it or not. He left the boy there right there on my couch and walked out the door. I sat frozen, my breath shallow, the DNA report trembling in my hands. For a long time, I didn't move. I couldn't. Then the little boy looked up at me and said, softly, Mommy? And something inside me broke. I didn't sleep that night. The house was quiet except for the soft, rhythmic breathing of the child sleeping on the couch. I sat in the kitchen with the lights dimmed, the folder open in front of me. The evidence was clear and yet impossible. I had gone through the treatments with Daniel years ago, before Ava was born. There had been complications. We'd frozen additional embryos. After his affair, I had no desire to revisit any of it. Daniel handled the closure, the paperwork, the final consent forms. Or so I thought. Now it seemed he hadn't closed anything at all. And somehow, a stranger, his mistress, had used my embryo. It felt too twisted to be real. Like a cruel story told by someone who didn't understand what motherhood meant. At around 2 a.m., I walked to the living room. The boy had kicked off his blanket. I tucked it back around him, hesitating as I brushed a curl off his forehead. He stirred but didn't wake. And in that moment, despite everything, something inside me softened. He didn't ask to be born into chaos. He didn't choose any of this. Neither did I. But here we were, two pieces of a story written by someone else's choices. When morning came, I called my sister, Layla. She was the only person I trusted enough to tell. Her voice came through the phone, sleepy but warm. Maya. It's 6:30. What's wrong? I need you to come over, I said. Why? What happened? I can't explain it on the phone. Just, please come. She arrived 40 minutes later, wearing her robe and clutching a cup of coffee. One look at my face, and she sobered immediately. What happened? His back, I said. Her eyes narrowed. Daniel. What did he want? I stepped aside so she could see into the living room. The boy was awake now, sitting on the couch, playing quietly with Ava's old stuffed bear. Layla froze. Who is that? I told her everything, or as much as I could get through without crying. The clinic. The report. The note. The absurd claim that the boy was mine. When I finished, she sat down heavily. Oh my God, she whispered. Maya, that's insane. Are you sure it's real? I slid the papers toward her. Read it. She scanned the report, her mouth tightening. These look legitimate. I'm going to the clinic, I said. Today. I need answers. She nodded slowly, glancing at the boy. And him. I looked at him again, the way he was humming softly to himself, tracing the pattern on the couch cushion with his little finger. I'll take him with me, I said. If he's really mine. I can't just hand him back to Daniel like his lost luggage. Layla placed a hand over mine. You don't have to do this alone. I wanted to tell her I was fine. That I'd handled worse. But for the first time in years, I didn't have the strength to lie. At the clinic, everything smelled the same as it had years ago, that sterile, lemon-scented air that never quite hides the undertone of disinfectant. The receptionist looked up as I approached. Can I help you? Yes, I said quietly. My name is Maya Carter. I was a patient here, 8 years ago. She typed something into her computer, her polite smile never faltering. And what can we do for you today, Ms. Carter? I need to speak to someone about an old fertility record. It's urgent. Her eyes flickered briefly to the child holding my hand. One moment. After a few minutes, a woman in a lab coat appeared. Ms. Carter. I'm Dr. Nguyen. Why don't you come with me? We sat in a small consultation room, the boy coloring quietly at the table in the corner. I know this is unusual, I began, my voice trembling slightly, but I need to know if there's any record of my embryos being used. I was told they were destroyed years ago, but Dr. Nguyen studied me carefully. You believe one may have been implanted without your consent? I nodded. Her expression shifted, not shock, but something close to concern. That's a serious allegation. We keep detailed logs. Do you have any documentation? I handed her the folder. She glanced through it, her brow furrowing deeper with each page. After a long silence, she said, "Give me an hour." When she returned, she was pale. "Miss Carter," she said softly, "you were right to come." My stomach dropped. What do you mean? There was an unauthorized access to your file 6 years ago. The signature on the consent form doesn't match yours. It matches Daniel Carter's. I stared at her, the words blurring together. He authorized the use of one embryo under the name Sarah Collins, she continued. Our system flagged it as a spouse transfer which bypassed secondary verification. It shouldn't have happened. I am deeply sorry. The room felt smaller. The air thicker. I looked at Liam, still coloring, unaware his very existence had just been explained by an act of deceit. Dr. Nguyen continued, I will prepare an official report for your lawyer. This is a serious breach. I nodded numbly. Thank you. When I stepped outside into the sunlight, everything looked too bright. Too normal for what I'd just learned. Layla called as I was strapping Liam into the car seat. Did you find out anything? Yes, I said quietly. Daniel signed for it. He's the reason this child exists. Her breath caught. Maya. I'm fine, I said automatically. But I wasn't. Because for the first time, I understood that forgiveness, the kind I'd given him before, had only taught him I would never fight back. This time, I would. That night, I didn't even bother turning on the lights. The house sat in silence, the kind that feels heavy, like it's pressing on your ribs. Liam was asleep in the guest room, curled up with one of Ava's old blankets. The faint hum of the baby monitor I'd found in storage was the only sound that reminded me he was real. I sat at the kitchen table with my laptop open and the clinic's report beside me. The cursor blinked in the search bar as I typed, unauthorized embryo use legal case. The results flooded in cold, clinical words about lawsuits, consent, medical ethics. None of them sounded like what I was living through. None of them had faces: a man, a mistress, a stolen child, and a woman who once believed in forgiveness. When I finally closed the laptop, it was past midnight. My hands were shaking. Not from fear anymore, but from something sharper: resolve. I'd spent years trying to be the bigger person. When Daniel cheated, I stayed calm. When he lied, I prayed for him. When he left, I told myself he was lost, not cruel. But tonight, I saw him clearly. And it terrified me how long I'd mistaken control for kindness. The next morning, Ava noticed the extra plate on the breakfast table. Mom, she said, rubbing her eyes. Who's that for? I froze. It's for our guest, I said carefully. She frowned. Guest? You mean the little boy in my room last night? I nodded slowly. His name is Liam. Is he family? She asked, with the kind of piercing intuition only 10-year-olds have. I hesitated. That's something I need to figure out. She studied me for a long time. He looks like you. The words landed like a whisper of truth. That afternoon, Daniel called. He didn't say hello, just started talking as if we were in the middle of an old argument. Maya, I know you're angry, But you can't just take him. He's my responsibility too. I clenched my jaw. You left him here, Daniel. You walked out without him. I needed you to see. You needed to manipulate me again. He was silent for a beat. You always think the worst of me. I laughed bitterly. Daniel, you forged my signature to give another woman my embryo. You don't get to talk about what I think of you. I didn't forge anything, he snapped. I signed as your husband. We were still married then. The words made my stomach turn. He continued, you wouldn't listen. You wouldn't try again for a second child. You said you were done. I thought this would fix us. I felt something break inside me. You stole from me to fix us. I gave you the family you wanted. I nearly dropped the phone. You didn't give me a family, Daniel. You gave me lies wrapped in paperwork. His breathing was heavy now, angry, defensive. Maya, you can't just keep him. You can't just pretend none of this affects me. Actually, I said quietly, that's exactly what I plan to do. I hung up before he could reply. For the first time in years, I didn't cry after one of our conversations. 2 days later, I met with a lawyer. Her name was Claire Lewis, calm, composed, the kind of woman who could turn emotion into strategy. She read through the documents with the slow precision of someone dissecting a bomb. When she looked up, her expression was grim. This isn't just unethical, Maya. It's criminal. My heart thudded. You mean the clinic? Partially, she said. But Daniel's actions, signing your consent under false pretenses, that's fraud. And if he facilitated implantation for someone else, that's reproductive misconduct. You have a case. The word case felt both powerful and exhausting. Claire leaned forward. But before we move forward, you need to ask yourself what you want the outcome to be. Do you want custody of the boy? Do you want financial damages? Do you want criminal charges? I looked at Liam, playing quietly in the corner with a set of crayons I'd bought him the day before. He was drawing big, messy loops of color that barely stayed on the page. What did I want? I wanted justice. I wanted peace. But most of all, I wanted that little boy to never grow up believing he was a mistake. I want him safe, I said finally. And I want Daniel to never be able to do something like this again. Claire nodded. Then we'll start there. The weeks that followed felt like living in two worlds. In one, I was rebuilding, learning Liam's routines, figuring out what made him laugh, cooking meals that somehow ended up on the floor half the time. In the other, I was unraveling, digging through old records, confronting the truth of how my husband's betrayal had followed me long after he left. Sometimes, at night, I'd stand in the doorway of Liam's room and watch him sleep. There was something heartbreakingly familiar about him. The way he scrunched his nose when he dreamed. The faint dimple that appeared when he smiled in his sleep. He didn't look like Sarah. He didn't look like Daniel. He looked like Ava when she was little. One night, Ava padded up beside me. He snores, she whispered. I smiled faintly. You used to too. Do you love him? She asked. The question hit harder than I expected. I'm trying to, I said honestly. It's complicated. She thought about that, then nodded. I think love is always complicated. Her words stayed with me long after she went to bed. Daniel showed up again 2 weeks later. This time, he didn't knock. He just walked into the yard while Ava and I were planting herbs by the back porch. Daniel, I said, standing up slowly. You're trespassing. He ignored me, his eyes scanning the yard. Where is he? I crossed my arms. Inside. I need to see him. No, I said. You need to leave. He stepped closer, lowering his voice. Maya, you can't keep doing this. You're confusing him. His mind too. I felt anger rise like fire in my chest. He's not a possession, Daniel. He's a child. One you created through deceit. He smirked, that same cold, careless smirk I used to mistake for charm. You're always so dramatic. You act like you're perfect. You think you never hurt anyone. That stopped me. What's that supposed to mean? He leaned closer. You shut me out long before I cheated, Maya. You made me feel invisible. There it was, the same blame he always used to deflect accountability. I met his gaze steadily. You broke your vows, Daniel. You lied. You made choices that destroyed this family. Don't you dare turn that into my fault. His eyes flickered anger, guilt, pride, all battling for control. You'll regret keeping him from me, he said finally. Maybe, I said softly. But I'll never regret protecting him from you. He left, slamming the gate behind him. Ava, who had been standing quietly by the herbs, finally spoke. Mom, is he going to take Liam away? I knelt down beside her. No, baby. He won't. She looked up at me, her small hands trembling. He's scary when he's mad. I pulled her close. I know. That's why we don't let him in anymore. A month later, the court hearing began. Daniel had filed for partial custody. He claimed he'd acted in good faith and that any mistakes were miscommunications. His lawyer painted him as a remorseful father trying to do the right thing. My lawyer countered with the evidence, the forged consent, the clinic's report, the signed affidavits. I sat there, my hands clenched, as Daniel took the stand. He looked nervous, but not broken. Still the performer, still the man who believed charm could undo consequence. Mr. Carter, Claire said smoothly, did you sign this consent form? Yes, he admitted. Did you have your wife's permission? He hesitated. At the time, I believed. Yes or no, Mr. Carter? His jaw tightened. No. Did you understand that using her embryo without consent was illegal? He looked away. I thought it would help her. She was struggling. I was trying to make things right. Claire leaned closer. By giving another woman her child? He said nothing. The silence in the courtroom was suffocating. When it was my turn to testify, I didn't raise my voice. I didn't cry. I spoke about the years of manipulation, the false apologies, the forgiveness that was never enough. I spoke about finding strength in the ruins, about learning that peace isn't the same as pretending nothing happened. When the judge ruled in my favor, granting me full custody and ordering the clinic under investigation, I didn't feel victory. I felt release. Afterward, Daniel approached me in the hallway. For the first time, he looked small. Defeated. You won, he said quietly. No, I replied. I finally stopped losing. That night, I sat on the porch with Ava and Liam. The sky was pink with the last light of sunset. Ava leaned against my arm. Liam, barefoot and sticky from popsicles, giggled at something only he could understand. It was peaceful, the kind of peace that doesn't erase pain but makes room for it. Layla called to check on me. So, what now? I smiled faintly. Now we heal. She was quiet for a moment. You kept him. Yes, I said. Because he's innocent. Because I can't undo what Daniel did, but I can choose what happens next. You're stronger than you think, you know. Maybe, I said softly. Or maybe I'm just tired of letting someone else write my story. When I hung up, I looked at Liam again. He was watching fireflies, eyes wide with wonder. In that moment, I realized something I hadn't before. Forgiveness wasn't about Daniel anymore. It was about me. About refusing to let bitterness define the rest of my life. For years, I thought forgiveness meant letting him back in. But now, I understood it meant letting myself move on without him. The first few months after the court hearing felt strangely quiet, almost too quiet. It was as though the chaos had burned itself out, leaving behind the fragile calm of a house after a storm. The kind where you can still smell the rain in the air, still see the branches that fell, but the worst of the thunder has finally passed. Life didn't snap back to normal. It rebuilt itself, piece by piece, quietly, awkwardly, honestly. Liam adjusted faster than I expected. Children, I realized, have a kind of grace that adults lose somewhere along the way. They don't need apologies or explanations to love you, they just need to feel safe. And so I made safety our routine. Every morning, I'd pack lunches for Ava and Liam while the sun crept through the kitchen curtains. The smell of toast and strawberry jam filled the air. Ava would hum the theme song from whatever cartoon she was currently obsessed with, and Liam would copy her, always a few notes off. Sometimes, in those moments, I'd stop and watch them, these two children who shared the same father but such different beginnings. One born from love, the other from betrayal. And yet, when they sat together at the table, laughing over crumbs and spilled juice, there was no difference between them. Love had leveled the ground. Still, not everything was simple. Daniel didn't disappear right away. He called. He texted. He even sent letters, long, rambling ones full of justifications and half apologies. He said he wanted to be a part of Liam's life. He said he'd changed. He said he deserved a second chance. But every word felt like déjà vu. I never responded. Not once. One afternoon, though, I found Ava reading one of the letters he'd sent. I must have left it unopened on the counter. She looked up at me with wide eyes, her voice quiet. "Mom, do you still love him?" The question hit like a slap. I took a deep breath. "Love and trust aren't the same thing, sweetheart." She frowned. "So, you can love someone and still not want them around?" "Yes," I said softly. "You can love the good parts of someone, and still know they're not good for you anymore." She thought about that, nodding slowly. "That sounds hard." "It is." That night, after she went to bed, I sat alone by the window, thinking about what she'd asked. Did I still love Daniel? Maybe a small part of me always would, the part that remembered the man I thought he was, not the one he turned out to be. But love without truth is just nostalgia wearing a disguise. And I was done mistaking one for the other. Months passed. Spring turned into summer, and for the first time in years, our home felt alive again. Liam started calling me Mommy without hesitation. The first time he said it, I froze. It wasn't forced. It wasn't confused. It was pure, instinctive, like the word had been waiting in his chest all along. I cried that night, silently, into my pillow. Not because I was sad, but because it was the first time the word didn't break me. It healed something instead. Still, there were moments of doubt. At the grocery store, strangers would glance at us, me, Ava, and Liam, and assume the easy story, a mother with her two children. They'd smile and say, "They look just like you." And every time, my heart would twist. Because in some way, they were right. And in another way, it was a lie. I started therapy again, not because I was falling apart, but because I wanted to learn how to stop carrying everything like I was always about to. My therapist, Dr. Rowan, had the kind of calm voice that could turn silence into safety. One day, after I'd finished telling her about the court case and Daniel's letters, she said something that stuck with me. "Maya, you've built your whole life around forgiveness. But have you ever forgiven yourself?" I blinked. "For what?" "For staying too long," she said gently. "For believing too hard. For thinking you could fix him by breaking yourself." Her words made me cry harder than I had in months. Because I realized I'd forgiven Daniel years ago, but I'd never once forgiven me. One evening, after dinner, Ava and Liam sat on the porch playing a made-up game with chalk and pebbles. The golden light of sunset spilled across the yard. I sat on the steps, sipping tea, watching them draw crooked hearts on the pavement. Liam looked up suddenly. "Mommy, can we go see Grandma soon?" He meant Daniel's mother, a kind woman who had stayed quietly in touch with me after the divorce. She'd never taken sides, but she had always loved Ava, and now, somehow, she adored Liam too. I hesitated, then nodded. "Yes, baby. We can visit." Ava smiled. "Grandma makes the best cookies." We all laughed, and for a fleeting second, everything felt right again, like the past had been washed clean. But the next morning, my phone buzzed with a call that reminded me the past never really disappears. It was Daniel's mother. Her voice trembled. "Maya, It's Daniel. He's in the hospital. My chest tightened. What happened? Car accident, she said. He's stable but hurt bad. He's been asking for you. For me. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. I drove to the hospital in silence. The sky was grey, the kind of overcast that makes every thought heavier. When I reached his room, he looked smaller than I remembered. There were bruises along his jaw, bandages on his arm. His eyes fluttered open when he heard the door. Maya, he whispered. I stood at the foot of the bed, clutching my bag. What do you want, Daniel? He smiled faintly. You came. I came because your mother called me, I said quietly. Not for you. He nodded slowly, a shadow of a smile. Still, you came. There was a long silence. The sound of the heart monitor filled the space between us. I never wanted to hurt you, he said finally. I just didn't know how to stop lying. I looked at him, really looked the man I once loved, now frail and full of half-truths. You always had a choice, Daniel. You just didn't like the one that didn't make you the hero. His eyes glistened. I miss you. I miss our family. Our family still exists, I said. You're just not part of it anymore. He turned his head away, tears slipping down his cheek. Do you hate me? I took a deep breath. No. That's the thing, Daniel. I don't. I stopped hating you the moment I realized you were never going to change. He swallowed hard. You're stronger than me. I had to be, I said. Because you never were. The monitor beeped steadily. I stood there for a moment longer, then turned to leave. Maya, he called after me, his voice weak. Take care of him, of Liam. I paused at the door. I already am. And then I walked out, not because I wanted to, but because I finally could. A week later, Daniel was discharged. He moved out of state not long after, and for the first time since I'd known him, he didn't try to come back. His mother visited occasionally, bringing gifts for the kids, never speaking his name. I think she knew it was better that way. Life moved forward, quietly, without ceremony. One day, as I was folding laundry, Liam came running in, clutching a crayon drawing. Look, Mommy. It was a picture of 4 stick figures, me, Ava, him, and Daniel. I froze. That's very nice, sweetheart. He looked up at me with those big, curious eyes. Is Daddy coming back? I knelt down, choosing my words carefully. No, baby. Daddy lives somewhere else now. He frowned. But he's still my daddy, right? I nodded slowly. Yes. But that doesn't mean you have to wait for him. He tilted his head. What do you mean? It means, I said softly, brushing a curl from his forehead, that you already have everything you need right here. He smiled, satisfied with the answer, and ran back to play. I watched him go, my heart heavy but calm. Because I knew he'd grow up learning something I never did until much later, that family isn't defined by who leaves. It's defined by who stays. Months turned into a year. Ava started middle school. Liam started kindergarten. I went back to teaching part-time, rediscovering pieces of myself I'd left buried under motherhood and survival. I started gardening again. Joined a book club. Even went on a date, just one, quiet and uneventful, but enough to remind me that life still held possibilities. And through it all, there were moments, small, precious ones, that reminded me I'd made the right choice. Like when Ava helped Liam with his homework, her patience matching mine. Or when Liam, out of nowhere, said, Mommy, I love you bigger than the sky. There were still nights I'd lie awake, wondering what would have happened if I'd never opened that door the day Daniel came back. But then I'd hear the sound of both my children breathing in their sleep, steady and safe. And I'd know that everything, even the pain, had led me here. 2 years passed. Time, I learned, doesn't erase pain, it teaches you how to live beside it. There were days when memories of Daniel crept in like faint shadows. Birthdays, holidays, the smell of his favorite cologne on a stranger in a grocery aisle. But they didn't sting the same way anymore. They were softer, distant, like echoes from a story that no longer belonged to me. Ava was 12 now, growing fast and thoughtful. She'd inherited my quiet strength and Daniel's stubborn streak, a combination that could be both a blessing and a challenge. Liam was 5, full of energy and questions. Every morning, he'd wake me by crawling into bed, whispering it's morning time, with the kind of excitement adults forget how to feel. Our home had become a little ecosystem of second chances. Not perfect, never that, but peaceful, honest, grounded. And yet, every so often, I'd catch a glimpse of Liam's reflection in the mirror, the familiar curve of his smile, the way his laugh tilted upward just like Daniel's, and for a heartbeat, grief would rise again. Not grief for Daniel, but for the life that could have been if the man I once loved had been capable of truth. It was a rainy Sunday afternoon when the past knocked again. I was in the kitchen, slicing apples for a pie, when the doorbell rang. Liam was building a fort in the living room, and Ava was upstairs on a video call with her cousin. When I opened the door, a woman stood there. She was in her 30s, with chestnut hair and a nervous smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. She was holding an umbrella and a small manila envelope. "Hi," she said softly. "You must be Maya." I nodded slowly. "Can I help you?" She hesitated. "I'm Sarah." For a second, I didn't breathe. Sarah. The woman who had been Daniel's mistress. The woman who carried my embryo, my son, and vanished. I tightened my grip on the doorframe. "What are you doing here?" She swallowed hard. "I heard about the court case. About what happened. I should have come sooner, but I didn't know how." "Why now?" I asked, my voice flat. She looked down, her fingers trembling slightly. "Because I'm sick," she said. "And before anything happens, I needed to tell you the truth." I let her in, reluctantly. She sat on the couch, damp from the rain, her umbrella dripping onto the floor. I stayed standing, arms crossed, every muscle in my body braced for whatever she was about to say. "I didn't know," she began. "About the embryo, I mean. Daniel told me it was a donor, that he'd arranged it. I didn't find out it was yours until after Liam was born. I was terrified. I wanted to tell you, but he said he'd handle it." Her voice cracked. I believed him. God help me, I believed him. I wanted to hate her, wanted it so badly, but sitting there, watching her break, all I could feel was exhaustion. "Do you know what he did to me?" I asked quietly. She nodded, tears streaking down her face. "I do now. And I'm so sorry. You didn't deserve any of it." "No," I said. "Neither did Liam." She looked up sharply, eyes wide. "How is he?" The question caught me off guard. "He's fine," I said. "Healthy. Happy." A faint smile flickered through her tears. "Good. That's all I ever wanted for him." "Then why did you leave him?" I asked. Her face crumpled. "Because I wasn't well. Not just physically, mentally. After he was born, I had postpartum depression. Daniel was distant, angry. I felt trapped. One day I just left. I told myself it was for his safety." I sank into the armchair across from her, unsure whether to believe her or not. She reached into her bag and pulled out the envelope. "This is for you. It's Liam's birth records, medical history, everything I had. I thought you should have them." I took the envelope carefully, my heart pounding. "Why tell me this now?" I asked. She hesitated. "Because I need peace. And because I wanted you to know. I'm grateful. You saved him." There was a long silence. The kind that feels like 1,000 unsaid words hanging in the air. Finally, I said, "You should see him." Her eyes widened. "Are you sure?" "I don't know if I'll ever be sure," I admitted. "But he deserves to know who you are, even if he doesn't understand everything yet." I called Liam downstairs. He came running, his face lighting up when he saw me. "Mommy, look at my fort." I smiled, then looked at Sarah. "Liam, sweetheart, this is Miss Sarah. She's a friend." Sarah knelt down slowly, tears already in her eyes. "Hi, Liam." He tilted his head curiously. "Hi." She reached out, brushing a tear away quickly. "You have your mother's eyes," she whispered. Liam grinned. "That's what Grandma says." They talked for a few minutes, simple, innocent conversation about toys and school and his favorite ice cream flavor. Sarah didn't push, didn't touch him. She just listened. Watched. Memorized. And when she stood to leave, she turned to me and said, "Thank you. For being the mother I couldn't be." I nodded. "Goodbye, Sarah." She smiled sadly. "Goodbye, Maya." And just like that, she was gone. That night, after I tucked Liam into bed, I stood in the doorway for a long time, watching his small chest rise and fall. Sarah's words replayed in my mind. For being the mother I couldn't be. It wasn't pride I felt, it was something deeper, quieter. A strange, bittersweet peace. For the first time, I understood that motherhood isn't defined by biology or circumstance. It's defined by presence. By who stays when everyone else leaves. Weeks later, a letter arrived in the mail. It was from Sarah's attorney. A short note informing me that she had passed away and that she'd left something in her will. A trust fund, modest but meaningful, in Liam's name. Along with a letter. The letter was handwritten in delicate, slanted cursive. "Maya, I don't expect forgiveness. I only hope you'll tell him someday that I loved him. Not perfectly, not always rightly, but truly. You were the mother he needed. Thank you for giving him a home full of light. Please tell him I found peace knowing he's safe with you. Sarah." I folded the letter carefully and placed it in the box where I kept Liam's baby photos, medical reports, and memories I planned to give him when he was old enough to understand. That night, I sat on the porch under the stars, the cool air brushing against my skin. Ava joined me quietly, sitting cross-legged beside me. "Was that her?" she asked. "The woman who, you know." I nodded. "Yes." "Did she say sorry?" "She did." "Did you forgive her?" I thought about it for a long moment. "I think so." Ava leaned her head on my shoulder. "You forgive a lot, Mom." I smiled faintly. "It's not about forgetting what people did. It's about freeing yourself from carrying it." She was quiet for a while, then said, "I think you're the strongest person I know." Her words made my throat tighten. "You're the reason I became strong." We sat there together in silence, two survivors of the same story, separated by age but bound by resilience. Years later, when Liam turned 10, he found the letter. By then, I had told him everything, gently, carefully, in pieces he could handle. He read it in silence, his little brow furrowed. When he finished, he looked up at me. "She was sad, huh?" I nodded. "Yes. But she loved you." He thought about that for a while, then said, "I'm glad she had you." I blinked back tears. "Me too, baby." Sometimes, life doesn't give you clean endings. It gives you messy ones, full of half-healed wounds, unexpected grace, and quiet redemption. I didn't get my marriage back. I didn't get justice that erased the hurt. But I got something better. I got peace. Peace that came from choosing love over resentment. From raising 2 children in truth instead of illusion. From realizing that forgiveness isn't weakness, it's the strength to stop bleeding over things that already cut you. And in the end, that was enough. People often ask me if I regret forgiving him. If I wish I had fought harder, stayed angry longer, burned his name into the ground the way he burned through my trust. And every time, I tell them the truth. Forgiveness didn't save him. It saved me. It's strange, isn't it? How we're taught that forgiveness means letting someone back in, as if mercy and memory can exist in the same room without choking each other. But what I learned is this: forgiveness doesn't mean the door stays open. It means you stop standing in it, waiting for them to come home. When Daniel betrayed me, I thought I was forgiving him for our child's sake. But years later, when he came back with another child, my own, born from deceit, I realized forgiveness had nothing to do with him at all. It was about choosing to rise when I had every reason to stay on the floor. Because there's a kind of strength that doesn't shout or demand. It whispers. It keeps going. It makes breakfast, folds laundry, signs school forms, and finds laughter again, not because life is fair, but because you refuse to let it stay cruel. 4 years, I carried the belief that love was meant to endure anything, that it was noble to stay, righteous to sacrifice, holy to forgive endlessly. But real love, the kind that heals instead of haunts, begins when you stop trying to resurrect what's already gone. Daniel's love was built on convenience. Mine was built on truth. And truth always wins, not quickly, not cleanly, but quietly. It wins in the way my daughter looks at me now, not as a woman who was broken, but as one who rebuilt herself piece by piece. It wins in the way my son runs into my arms, not knowing the history that nearly kept him from existing, but feeling only safety, warmth, home. It wins in the silence that fills my house at night, not the hollow silence of betrayal, but the peaceful kind that comes when you've stopped fighting ghosts. Sometimes, late at night, I sit by the window with a cup of tea and watch the stars. I think about all the versions of myself I've been, the woman who cried over his lies, the mother who tried to hold a family together with trembling hands, the stranger who stared at her reflection and didn't recognize the woman looking back. And then I think of the woman I am now. Not perfect. Not untouched by pain. But whole. Whole because I learned that endings aren't punishments, they're directions. Whole because I stopped asking why me, and started saying thank you, but never again. Whole because I finally understand that sometimes, losing what you thought you needed is how life makes room for what you deserve. When I think of Daniel now, I don't feel hate. I don't feel love either. I feel distance, the kind that lets you look back without wanting to walk that road again. I imagine he's somewhere far away, building a different kind of life, telling a different version of our story, one that makes him look less cruel, maybe even a little tragic. That's fine. People like him always need an audience. But mine? My story is quieter. It's told through bedtime whispers, through the laughter that fills a kitchen, through 2 children who grew up knowing that truth, though painful, is always better than a beautiful lie. It's told through every woman who ever watched her world collapse and thought she'd never find her footing again. It's told through every man or woman who ever mistook endurance for love, silence for peace, forgiveness for forgetting. Because the truth is, you can forgive someone and still never let them touch your life again. You can love someone and still know they're not meant to walk beside you anymore. You can lose everything and still rise, softer but stronger, quieter but wiser. I sometimes wonder what Liam will think when he's older, when he finally understands the full story. Will he hate his father? Will he pity him? I hope he does neither. I hope he simply understands that sometimes adults make choices out of fear, and that fear can make even love look like cruelty. And I hope he sees that the only real victory in all of this wasn't in the courtroom or the DNA tests, it was in how we chose to live afterward. I hope he sees that his life began in deceit but grew in love. That he was born from chaos but raised in peace. That his mother, the woman who didn't give birth to him, but gave everything for him, never let the pain of his past define the beauty of his future. Every story I've ever told my children begins and ends the same way. Bad things will happen, I say. But they don't have to make you bad too. Because betrayal will come. In love, in friendship, in family, it will come. And when it does, you'll have a choice. You can let it make you bitter. Or you can let it make you new. I chose new. Sometimes, I visit the old courthouse downtown. I walk past the steps where I once stood trembling, clutching documents that would change the rest of my life. I remember the fear, the shame, the anger. I remember how small I felt, like the world had already decided who I was allowed to be. And then I remember walking out those same doors later that year, holding my son's hand, my daughter's backpack slung over my shoulder, my name still mine, my spirit still intact. That's what healing looks like. Not a clean slate. But a woman who walks through fire, comes out carrying her children, and still manages to plant flowers in the ashes. If you've ever been betrayed by a spouse, a friend, A parent, let me tell you something I learned the hardest way possible. You will not always get the apology you deserve. You will not always see justice served. And sometimes, the people who hurt you will move on as if they've done nothing wrong. But that doesn't mean you lost. Because peace, real peace, doesn't come from watching someone else suffer. It comes from finally being able to breathe without their name catching in your throat. It comes from loving again without fear. It comes from raising your children without bitterness. It comes from waking up one morning, looking in the mirror, and realizing that survival made you beautiful in a way you never expected. So if you're listening to this right now, wondering if it's worth forgiving someone who doesn't deserve it, here's what I'll say. Forgive them, not because they earned it, but because you deserve peace. Forgive them, not so they can come back, but so you can finally walk away. Forgive them, and then choose yourself every single time. And if you ever find yourself standing in the ruins of what used to be love, remember this. You are not what they did to you. You are not the lies they told. You are not the version of yourself that begged to be understood. You are the person who survived. You are the one who rebuilt. You are the ending they never expected, the kind that doesn't need vengeance to feel whole. Would you have done what I did? Would you have taken in the child born from betrayal? And chosen love anyway? Tell me in the comments below. And if my story found its way to your heart tonight, stay a little longer. Because sometimes, healing begins with a story. And someone brave enough to tell it.